I never experienced people giving me a hard time about it or making me feel like I was lesser, but I definitely put that upon myself. I don't know exactly where that came from, but I always just wondered, like, is this enough? Because, before I had a job, it's like, I hope this gets me a job. They tell me it will, but I was a little embarrassed to say that I went through this boot camp until I realized that going back to that, be teachable, not be an expert. I didn't try and present myself like I was an expert. It's here's what I have to offer. I'd love to learn more. How can you help me?
Hello, and welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, your host and companion on this incredible journey of career transformation. Get ready for inspiring stories, valuable insights, and a roadmap to shift your mindset towards a more fulfilling professional life. In each episode, we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who made the leap from one career to another. As we navigate through these stories together, you'll find motivation, strategies, and the confidence to pursue your dreams. Whether you're feeling stuck, contemplating a change, or just seeking a dose of inspiration, this podcast is your weekly companion. Tune in every Thursday as we uncover the secrets to shifting your day job. I'm Brittany Cates, and I'm here to guide you on your path to a more fulfilling career. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and I am grateful that you're here today. I am looking forward to introducing my friend and coworker, Libby Porter. She and I have been working at the same company for the past few years now as UX designers, and it was really cool because when Libby got hired on, I found out that she had previously been a school teacher as well, and we bonded over that. So I was really excited to talk to her today and learn more about what got her from teaching to design. Before we jump in, you're probably wondering, what is a UX designer? Well, the UX stands for user experience. And as a UX designer, we're responsible for the look and feel of a digital product, whether that's a website or an app. We determine what the best design is going to be for the users of our product. And we work with a team of developers who make our designs a reality. We also collaborate with product managers, and together we decide what the next best thing that we can create or develop within our product to improve the user's experience. So I hope that clears things up, maybe like this much, maybe a little bit. But anyway, without further ado, please help me in welcoming my friend Libby Porter to the podcast. Hi, Libby. Thanks for being a part of my podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Libby and I work together at the same company doing UX design, and we have a similar background, which was cool when we started working together. I was like, oh, another teacher. That's really cool. I know that you shared with me a little bit in the past, like your experience, but if you don't mind talking about what you were doing and how UX design came about for you and what that transition was like, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I got my degree in education. I went to Utah State actually to play soccer. So that's kind of what my focus was. And choosing a degree was not really something I was really thinking about. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I had an advisor that kind of pushed me towards education. And I thought, yeah, I think I'd be good at it. And so that was what pushed me in that direction. It wasn't something I anticipated doing or had ever really thought about, but so I got my degree and taught middle school for a year and then did 3 years of high school. In the time, I didn't know anything different. Looked like jobs are overwhelming, jobs are stressful. Nobody likes their job. As I really thought about it, the stress just kept building, and being a teacher is overwhelming. Kudos to all those out there teaching. It is hard work. And so my husband had gone through a boot camp to learn a new skill for iOS development. And he was like, Libby, you should do this. And I was like, no, I've got a degree. I'm good. I'm in my career. I'm set. This is the choice I made. So we live with it. Anyways, he kept just putting that in the back of my mind. And I would just always brush it off, like never considered it. And he said, they've got this UX design course, which I feel you would do really well and you would like. I have no official design background or experience, but I've always loved all things design. I've been a creative person. I loved scrapbooking growing up, those types of things. And so, really, what it was actually was my grandpa passed away. And so, my grandma was looking for someone to move in with her to help her out. And that was a big life moment that made me evaluate a lot of things. We were moving, and this actually made the concept of doing a boot camp more feasible. So one day I just said, okay, and I quit my job and jumped in with both feet. I signed up for this boot camp that was like a 15-week course, and I was all in. It was exceptionally scary, but it was exciting. And it felt like a release to be like, wow. I'd watch my husband, he was working from home, making way more money than I was. And I was so stressed about my job, feeling like I could never take a day off. And so when I finally quit, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. On to something better, on to something new. We can do this.
So, what would you say, like, he put the idea in your mind? Like, what was it about that idea that got you to the point where you were like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that?
Yeah, I think when he first presented it, it was just like, oh no, I don't like change. And that's scary. And there's also that element of I can't be a designer. That's but what? No. And so I just like I have this immediate reaction to change where I just throw up my arms and I say, oh, no way. And then I think as things sit in, your mind starts to wonder and you think about the logistics of it. And it just became this, why not? I was exhausted and I didn't love what I was doing. And I didn't feel like I was ever going to be that person that loved what I was doing until I think it was seeing my husband go through something similar and see how he changed his life through that. And it gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I could do it too. That could be me.
So, he was an example to you of like possibility where maybe you couldn't see it otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
How quickly after you started teaching were you like, yeah, I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this?
I think you start and it's just so overwhelming. And the teachers always say, oh, every year it gets better. And I think they say after 3 years, you're good because you're settled into everything. Everything's set and you just keep reusing the same stuff. But the thing was, every year something changed that was like a whole new curveball to where it felt like I never got to that position of being comfortable that I was expecting. So I was teaching, I was a club advisor, and I was also coaching soccer. And it didn't feel sustainable. And I remember thinking, because I didn't have kids at the time, but I remember thinking, how could I teach all day and then come home to my own children? I think I would be the worst mom. I would have no more energy to do anything outside of work. So just, yeah, at the end of every year, I expected it to be easier the next. And it just never was. And I feel like it got worse and started to weigh more and more on me each time.
Yeah. Were you considering any other possibilities amidst that? Like before your husband even mentioned this whole UX design thing?
I never considered a career change. It never crossed my mind. And I never even thought about doing anything else. He mentioned that UX design course and it was just like, that sounds awesome. And that sounds like me. It sounds like something I could do. So it is interesting for the person who doesn't like to just jump in and do something different or change. I didn't really consider it much and just jumped in.
And did you do any research on UX design? Or was it just like you trusted your husband that he was onto something and you just went with it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I didn't even know what it was. I had never heard of it before. And so I looked at this boot camp called Dev Mountain. They had like pre-course work that you could look through to get a feel for what you'd be learning. And I remember one of the first questions that kind of came up in that pre-coursework was, how do you define UX design? And I was like, I can't do that. I think it took me like a year to be able to explain it. And so, yeah, I just went through some of those materials to learn, but it was as I started the boot camp, it was still a concept that was a little gray and a little vague to me. I wasn't exactly sure totally what it was.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting. You just took action even when it was like totally murky for you. And you're just like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Like,
I think because it's an aspect of design, maybe that was what like sold me on it. I considered graphic design, I considered interior design. Briefly, these things crossed my mind as, oh, I would love to do that. And so maybe it was just like the design aspect of it that was like, okay, I'm sure I would love it.
was there ever a moment of self doubt during that career transition? And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, every day probably. Self-doubt is such a tough thing. It's so human for us to feel that way. And I even felt that way in teaching, which was a career that I had prepared and studied for so much. And so that's tough to go into something that's brand new and to try and battle those feelings. For me, a lot of that comes from comparing myself to others or comparing myself to a standard of where I think I'm supposed to be. And that never leaves me feeling good. And so I think just focusing on my strengths always helped. I didn't have design experience, but I feel like I had good people skills. And so I tried to lean into what I did have or what I felt like I was good at. And I tried to remind myself that it's better to be teachable than to be an expert. I think we're learning new things. We're not going to learn it all immediately to where, the people I have loved working with the most and who have had such an impact on me are just great people who you love being around. They're humble. They're always trying to learn. They work hard, those types of things. So focusing on strengths and then just looking for small wins, any little baby step that gave me a little confidence to say, I'm getting somewhere. We're a little bit better than we were yesterday. Those kinds of things helped me. And it's just constantly reminding yourself, you can do it. Keep going.
Yeah. It's this idea of the only person you're in competition with is yourself or like your former self. And so having that perspective of, am I a little bit better than I was yesterday? Or am I a little bit better than I was a year ago? And acknowledging the change that has occurred, because a lot of times you're in it and you're just going with the flow and working. And then one day you're suddenly the expert on this thing that you're like, oh, yeah, I remember when I first started with this concept and now I can actually talk to it. Like, okay, cool. I got this. I am making
Definitely.
strides.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's cool to look back and see that.
Yeah. Giving ourselves the credit that we're learning and we're growing. We can do this. Was there any moment along the way of feeling, because I know I went from teaching to tech and there was a little bit of trepidation of, will people take me seriously? Like, I don't have a design, like a UX design background. Did you feel any of that through the transition, or did anybody along the way give you this impression that, what are you doing? Who are you to do that? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Yeah. I think it was all self imposed. Like, I always wondered, what do people think of someone who went through a boot camp? Did we like cheat our way through? Are we not as good? Because it is a different education than people who went and did like a 4-year degree or have different kind of expertise in that realm. And so I never experienced people giving me a hard time about it or making me feel like I was lesser, but I definitely put that upon myself. I don't know exactly where that came from, but I always just wondered like, is this enough? because, before I had a job, it was like, I hope this gets me a job. They tell me it will. But I was a little embarrassed to say that I went through this boot camp until I realized that going back to that, be teachable, not be an expert. I didn't try and present myself like I was an expert. It's here's what I have to offer. I'd love to learn more. How can you help me?
I love that. I think it really is like a mind shift that we all have to make along the way, because it just reminds me of applying for jobs. And I think a lot of times, maybe most people, or maybe it's just me, start job hunting and you're like, I have to make a good impression and I have to show up a certain way. And then I think we all kind of have to get to a point where we're like, actually, I need to show up as myself and I need to interview them as much as they're interviewing me. And I need to make sure this is a good fit for me. And if they don't want someone that's teachable, they want someone that's an expert, okay, bye, on to the next. Because ultimately, you're trying to find the best fit for you and the right people for you to work with.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. Yeah, that little shift of yourself is enough and it's important. Otherwise, you're not going to be happy in that job if you lie your way through and pretend you're something that you're not. And so it's important to be yourself and to find the best fit for you.
Thanks for sharing the example of what you went through in that realm and how it's more of an inside job than anything else. So, was there ever a moment in your transition, or maybe your job hunt, or a position you had where there was a tough moment that you had to get through? And how did you stay resilient?
Yeah, for sure. There's one dark moment that always comes to mind. And I think it was my first interview. I had met a hiring manager through some event and we just hit it off very naturally. I wasn't nervous. I felt like I could be myself. I felt confident. And he invited me to come interview because they were looking for someone. And so I went through a series of interviews and felt great about them. And the feedback I was getting from the company was so positive, totally building me up to where I was like, I can do this. I might just impress them with my people skills and maybe they'll just help me learn the rest. And then I got a phone call saying, sorry, we're giving this position to somebody else. And I was devastated. I think because the way they had presented everything and the communication that we'd had was making me feel so confident that I had built this up. And all of a sudden, I just was kicked to the ground. I was devastated. I remember just sobbing, being so sad, and feeling like, I don't know if I can do this. Am I going to have more opportunities where I can feel this confident? And you just have to keep going in those moments. Nobody likes to fail. Nobody likes to be rejected or told no. But I think every rejection helps us learn and it makes us better. And I think we also start to take it less personally, that it's just, okay, that happened and we move on. And it was really just continuing on and just remembering to keep going because something is coming and something will work out and it will be the right opportunity.
Yeah. I'm sure people have lots of stories where they thought this job was going to work out and then it didn't. And then ultimately, that was what was best for them in the long run. And this idea of being able to hold on to those moments or those examples in your life and remember that rejection is often redirection to something better for you is is a practice,
Yeah.
right? But I think that's a really important thing to try and focus on, because you always have a choice, right? It's
Right.
either doom and gloom or, okay, I'm going to pick myself up and we're going to
Mhm.
keep going. And the other thought that I had was this idea of allowing yourself to be upset. Like you're totally allowed, and to cry about it, and to maybe even mope and sulk about it for a week or so, but
Yes.
ultimately remembering that this isn't how it's always going to be and allowing for hope.
I love that perspective of like redirection, not rejection. That's really cool. I like that.
As you were talking about changing to become a UX designer and how the design piece like interested you, and you're also mentioning your people skills. So my question is, what skills did you feel like that would really benefit or lend themselves to this career in design? And how did you sell yourself with those skills?
Yeah. I think, and if going back to the interview process, there were parts of me that felt like, wow, I'm probably coming across better than I actually am. Because I feel like I had an ability to communicate that came from my teaching, that I was confident being in front of people. I'm not scared to be in front of a group. I'm not scared to be put on the spotlight. Um, and being able to communicate like a process or a design and present myself in a way. I feel like that was a big thing that helped me in terms of the interview process. In terms of just day to day UX work, there is a lot of working with people just across different teams, working with users who are using your product, just being able to connect on a personal level and problem solving. I've always felt like I'm a good problem solver. I love solving problems, which is a big part of my daily work. So leaning into some of those pieces that could be applied to any job and anything we do. But those are a couple things that I feel like really helped me in design specifically.
I also want to mention you're a photographer and you do a really great job from what I've seen. And I know that's something that's been like a passion, hobby of yours. How did you get into photography and were you still doing any of that
Yeah.
other than for pleasure?
I love making videos. And this kind of started from a few friends who would make videos when we would go on a trip. And I remember thinking, oh, I want to go on a trip with them because they're going to make a cool video after. And then I realized, oh, I could do this myself. Like, I can teach myself how to do this. And then I don't have to go with anyone else. And so I just started to pick up bits and pieces, watch YouTube videos, and start to figure it out. I'm embarrassed looking back at my first videos, but they're such good memories that, bad or not, that I'm so glad I have them. And so that's been something I love doing in my free time. And especially now with little ones at home, just capturing those little moments are so special. That's definitely something I love doing.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if you'd done it as like a side job or anything like that. So it really has just been for pleasure and because you enjoy doing it. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Can you talk about building a support system and seeking guidance through networking and mentorship on your journey to career change?
Yeah. I think that was the beauty of Dev Mountain is so much of it was focused on community that going through the course, because it was not easy learning, it was like drinking through a fire hose. But going through the course, you had all the support of people who had done it before you, people who are doing it at the same time. But then after graduating, you immediately had a built in network of people who understood and people who could help maybe be a connection and hopefully guide you to a job. And so I think that was the best thing was just being able to either commiserate with people on a tough day or to talk to someone who knew what I was going through and could help give me that light at the end of the tunnel to know that it was going to work out. You just have to keep putting in the work. And so having that community from Dev Mountain, but then also getting involved in the design community, I feel was really helpful to start getting the ball rolling, just to meet people and get comfortable interacting with other professionals really made me feel more confident and made me feel like I could reach out to people if I had questions or needed help with something.
When you say getting involved with the design community, what are some ways that you did that?
So mostly through like Meetup, they would host events, which was great. Great to just get to know people. Definitely get out of my comfort zone. I said I don't mind being in front of people and talking to people, but I'm not like a super social butterfly. I'm more introverted. I'm not the kind of person that just wants to go out and meet everyone. But I felt like that was, it's designed in a way where it's a little bit more of a safe space. You know what to expect to get to know people.
Do you have any strategies or any tips for people when it comes to networking or like how to approach starting a conversation with somebody or anything like that?
I remember advice I was given was like, don't ask for a job. And so I just think it's great to think of it more as let's build a friendship. Let's just get to know each other. This shouldn't be focused around getting a job. But when you're looking for a job and you're unemployed, it's hard to not think that way. But just being able to be yourself. And I mentioned that experience meeting that hiring manager, which ultimately it didn't work out. But the way that we got talking and connected was just so natural. And so being yourself and trying to think of, are there ways that I can give and not just take from this person? I do think it's great. There's so many opportunities for mentorship, but not approaching it in a way of just like, oh, take, take, take. But also, can this be like more of a friendship that's more joined?
Yeah, I love that. It makes me think. So, we mentioned earlier about showing up as your authentic self and not trying to be something other than that. And that always makes me think of my experience with meeting our manager,
Hmm.
Corey. I met him through a meetup as well. And there weren't that many other designers on there. And it was my first time, totally new. And I guess I spoke up and asked a good question. I don't know, but it was just me being myself. Like I wasn't even trying, I guess is my point. And he reached out to me later and was like, hey, I was really impressed by your question that you asked in the group. We're looking, would you like to interview? And I was like, my question? Like, I didn't even
You?
know that I'd done anything. To me, it was just natural and normal. And so I think my takeaway from that is again, we don't give ourselves credit for what we already do. That's just part of who we are and what we're used to. And you never know what's going to stand out to somebody else
Yeah,
and make them notice you. Yeah.
I love that. The little things you never realize.
I wanted to ask you if you could maybe talk about the difference that you felt between being in a career as a teacher. You've talked about how that made you like feel and how it was overwhelming and it didn't seem sustainable. What's the difference now that
Yeah.
you're in this career?
Yeah. I remember being so jealous of people who could just take a day off work, just drop everything and take a day off. As a teacher, you have to do so much prep work just to take a day off. And this was maybe another light bulb moment now that I'm thinking about it was we got invited to a wedding and the day of the wedding was the worst day that it's like I could not miss this day of teaching. It was the final day before the big test. It was our only chance to review. And so I stayed up until I think 5 a.m. trying to prepare something that would like replace me as a teacher so that my students would be okay. And I was so tired that we ended up not going to the wedding. We missed the wedding after all of that. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I just want to take a day off. And so that was a big thing. I was so jealous of someone who could just take a day off. And I think that's really healthy in terms of that work life balance to be able to step away from work with however short of notice to be able to get a break or go on a vacation. So that was a big thing. I also think lifestyle wise, I felt really stuck as a teacher because I always had to live within 30 miles of that school. there wasn't much flexibility there. And my family and I were still trying to figure out where we wanted to be and we wanted to travel and things like that. And being in an opportunity now where I work remotely, I can work from anywhere. And there's lots of benefits that again just give me more of that work-life balance that I've been looking for and has led to so much more satisfaction and enjoyment. So not only like inside of work hours do I feel happier, but outside of work hours, I can completely unplug. I can completely relax. I don't have to do those overtime hours outside of work. And that's just been it's been amazing and a huge blessing.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Can you offer any practical tips or resources for listeners to help them shifting their mindset to this idea of a new career is possible?
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind. The first one is to commit. And I think that could look differently depending on what your situation is. For me, I had the opportunity to take a full time course or a part time course. And I remember talking to someone that said people who do the full time course generally find more success. And it's because they're fully committed. They don't still have one foot in the door trying to hold open their other opportunity. And so that kind of came down for me quitting my job. And again, it totally depends on your situation, but making like a big decision and change like that really pushed me forward. It was like, okay, I'm all in. There's no going back. And I don't want to go back. It's going to be hard, but I'm now committed. And that really helped just change my mindset. Instead of, like I said, with being scared of change, I'm the kind of person that loves my comfort zone. I just want to snuggle up with a little blanket in my comfort zone. But quitting my job forced me out and I couldn't go back in. So I think that was important for me. The second thing that comes to mind is to not take shortcuts. If you're making a career change, it can feel like a step backward, right? From I left all this education that I had and all this knowledge that I had to go and start from square one. That can be hard, but I think it's important to invest in your future and not try and skip steps to get where you want to go faster because I think it's only going to come back and bite you later. And so I think take the time to build a good foundation and don't try and climb up the ladder faster than you're ready. I think I remember someone telling me the beauty of being a junior designer was you can ask all the questions. Like people want to help you grow. And once you do grow and get into one of those leadership positions, then people are coming to you with the questions. So I think it's important to take advantage of being new and take advantage of, I don't want to say being at the bottom, but starting fresh and don't try and cheat your way up faster than you're ready for.
I love that. You mentioned that in one of our recent meetings that we had, take advantage of being a junior. And that really resonated with me because I feel like there's a part of me that's like, I have to prove myself. I deserve to be here too, just because I was a teacher and I didn't start where everybody else did. But being okay with actually, it's a good thing that I can have this opportunity to be inquisitive and to not be the person that knows everything. So I appreciate that advice because it's helped me kind of shift my perspective a little bit. And the other thing you're talking about, I'm sorry, what was your first point again?
Commit. Both feet in instead of one foot out the door.
Yeah. I would say that I have to agree with that because when I was learning UX design, I was also teaching full time, but I had the luxury of being at home and doing everything online, teaching online and learning UX online. But I had to decide if I was going to start the next year as a teacher, the next school year, or if I was going to be all in with this design thing that I didn't have a job with. And I had found myself throughout my professional career, being in and out of teaching, I had found myself always one foot in teaching as my safety net. And the school year started, and I went for this first day of orientation, whatever, for the new school year. And I left and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. I was like, this is not going to work for
Nope.
me. And so I went in the next day and I resigned. And I was scared to death because I did not have a job lined up.
Yep.
But I was like determined to figure it out, right?
Mhm.
Once you're out,
Right.
you're like, okay, I don't have a choice. I'm going to
Yep.
figure this out. I trust myself enough to figure this out. And I did. And to this day, I still have people that are like, I can't believe you did that. Like, you don't even have a job lined up. And I'm like, yeah, but I did do it. And I'm
Yep.
like, look where I'm at now. And
Cool.
it really is super, super liberating to just walk away,
Mhm.
as frightening as it is in the moment. And then I like got in my car and I was like, what? It's like this sense of relief. And I felt like that was a big sign for me. I was like, okay, I'm doing the right
Mhm.
thing. Know myself well
Yeah.
enough to know that this is what's right for me.
Yeah.
I really agree with you on that. Like, go all in
Yeah.
and believe that you can do it and you're going to make it happen. There's no other option. So
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to close out with asking, where are you now? How are you feeling in your current role?
Yeah. I think there's still ups and downs with every job and career, but altogether it's positive and altogether we're trending upward. And still the moments of self-doubt where I still have to remind myself I am still learning. I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, so still learning, but amazing to look at where I've come from. And it's given me so much confidence to say, because a lot of people come to me and say, that's amazing that you switch your job and that you're so happy. And money is not always the most important thing, but it's great to be making more money and to feel a little bit more at ease with where I'm at in life. And so people would say, wow, I can't believe you did that. And I think, well, why can't you? Nothing is stopping you. Anyone can do it if they just have the conviction and the confidence to say, I can do this. And so I think that confidence has helped me in other aspects of my life too, to be like, okay, it's scary. I'm getting better with change and I can roll with the punches because I've been punched a lot and I've fallen down and I get back up. But so with every new job I get in UX and new team that I work with, I get more and more confidence. And I'm so happy with where I'm at right now and working with such great teammates. Um, and with a manager that I love. And it feels cheesy sometimes to talk about loving what I do. I like the people that I work with, but I also love what I do. I think the things that give us the most energy in life, I don't think it's about like the amount of effort you put into something, but it's about the things that ignite your passion and excitement. Like, I feel like that's where our energy comes from. That I could work so hard all day and be getting a ton of things done. But if I'm doing something that I really like, it doesn't exhaust me like teaching did. And it more like makes me excited and gives me some of that energy.
I love that. I think those are two great messages to end the podcast with. So thank you for being a guest on my show today. And thank you for your support and willingness to help me with this. And I'm really glad that we work together. I wish that we were remote so we could see each other more, but I'm just really glad to have you in my circle. So thank you.
Same. It has been so fun. And I love like having a fellow teacher vet out there, someone who gets it and someone who's done what I've done and to be able to share that with you.
Thanks. I want to thank Libby for being on the podcast today. I found her story so interesting and inspirational. I am super impressed that she just jumped right in when there were a lot of unknowns. But the thing that stood out to me was the fact that she really clung to the things she did know. Like she knew what wasn't working for her in teaching. She knew what her strengths were and what interested her and lit her up. And she also valued the input from her husband, and she trusted that he was on to something when he encouraged her to pursue this new career. So I think that Libby is the prime example of not having to have it all figured out before you are willing to try something new. And I just want to thank her for sharing her experience on the podcast today. I hope you found it as valuable and inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episodes, it would be super helpful if you left a review for the podcast. The more reviews that the podcast gets, the easier it is for people to find it. So if you found value from any of these episodes, I would encourage you to share your review so that other people can find the podcast and gain value in their life as well. So it's one of those things that, like, if something has really impacted your life, you want to tell everyone about it, well, the reviews are the place to do that. Again, I'm so grateful that you're here, that you're listening, and I hope you join me again next week as we continue to hear amazing stories from inspirational women who have done the work in order to change their work. So, again, thank you for joining me. My name is Brittany Cates, and together let's continue to work towards shifting your day job.